What college statistic will you fall into? In Hebrews 10, verses 24 through 25, we read, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." Inside this premiere episode of Campus Bread, I'll share the heart behind the podcast and give you the 411 on where this movement is headed. Let's dive in. Hey, beautiful. Welcome to Campus Bread. I'm your host, Brianna Ruelas, and this podcast is dedicated to motivating and encouraging college women towards faith and friendship. Your college years are full of highs and lows, but we're building a community here with the hope that you'll feel a little less alone and a lot more connected. This is a place where you can be anchored in truth and reminded of how exquisite and loved you truly are. Oh my goodness. Welcome to the premiere first episode ever of Campus Bread. I couldn't be more excited to be with you today. And as you're tuning in to this episode, I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you for taking a chance on this podcast, and thanks for listening. Here's the thing. You are in a very exciting stage of life that you're in right now. Okay. And it's an honor for me to connect with you right here, right now inside this podcast. So I wanted to just take a moment to introduce myself to you as your host of Campus Bread. My name is Brianna. I'm a Texas girl, a mom to 3 young ladies, one more so a woman. And I have a heart for family, God, and encouraging young women to squeeze the most juice out of life. I did not grow up a pastor's kid. I am not the wife of a pastor. And honestly, I didn't even grow up in a house that went to church on Sundays. Okay. In fact, growing up, I was told that it was rude to talk about religion. But thankfully, by the grace of God, I now know that I'm the daughter of a king, and so are you. I felt called to launch the Campus Bread podcast so college women could feel less alone and more connected as they grow in faith and friendship. But I also wanted to be part of a solution that bucked some pretty discouraging statistics out there concerning faith and also the mental health of young women. So there was a recent Gallup poll which was launched, and it states that an overwhelming majority of college women report daily that they feel isolated, anxious, and alone. Okay, I believe this is because A, they're trying to find their tribe, B, they're adjusting to this new life apart from everything they've previously known, and C, I believe they're ultimately seeking acceptance for who they are. Some of this could be COVID related, but honestly, I don't want to make that an excuse anymore. Okay, that is behind us. We can move forward, and at the end of the day, the chances are, if you're tuning into this episode, you can relate to one of those things that I just stated above. Okay. And if you consider yourself anchored in your Christian faith, you are not excluded from this statistic. Christian college women are feeling the pressure. They are struggling with fear, self doubt. So they battle. They're in this sort of in between of wanting to control and wanting to have the say and wanting to rely on their own selves versus giving up trust and surrendering it. So there's also another statistic, okay? This statistic shows that the majority of Christian college students either stop attending church or lose their faith completely during these 4 formative years as young adults. Okay. Now, I believe there's also many reasons for this statistic among college students, including distractions, good and bad. It's pretty easy for us to just sleep in every Sunday morning. Complacency, they're either bored or they're fed up with church. Or it's just straight up rebellion because they're either tired of going through the motions or doing what they're told on Sunday morning. And they believe freedom is ultimately doing what the heck they want to do, right? Full disclosure, I 100% fell into this statistic. I called myself a Christian, but the truth is, I lived out my college years with what I call a faith of convenience. I acknowledged God and the truths of the Bible as I saw fit, and I discarded the rest. Okay, I spent years walking a path disconnected from God. I was reliant on my own accord. I was buried in false confidence and I strayed pretty far off the beaten path, okay? But as a walking testimony to God's redemption and restoration, I wholeheartedly believe that college women could have the most adventurous, fun filled college experience and still stay connected to God. And I'm on a mission to share some wisdom to help them get there. So, Campus Bread isn't your regular podcast, it's a call to address the overwhelm, the worry, and the loneliness that a majority of female undergraduate students struggle with daily. Okay. It's a movement to normalizing talking about our faith without judgment, to feed ourselves with the good stuff, and to boldly share our God given gifts with the world. It is a charge to you to not give up meeting together as some of us are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another in faith as we read in Hebrews 10:25. I desire for all young women to experience an audacious faith that fuels them with confidence, peace, and the motivation to become the next generation of leaders to make their limitless impact in the world. And as I stated, I believe it is possible to have the most memorable, adventurous, and fun filled college experience while still staying connected with God, right? So, look, whether right or wrong, good or bad, many of us inherited our faith. It was passed down to us through someone close, perhaps. Now, like me, I was fortunate enough to have an experience that opened my eyes to what a personal relationship with Jesus could look like. Okay. And even with that, sometimes we settle on a hand me down theology that either makes us feel super good about where we're at in our faith, or it makes us feel pretty miserable or full of shame or regret or guilt. Okay. But either way, without anchoring our lives to a consistent faith practice, it's easy to get distracted and meh about prioritizing time with God. But like any relationship, if we don't commit and prioritize time together, the relationship fails. So we have to ask ourselves, what keeps us accountable to our faith? I'll tell you this right now. It's not walking it alone, okay? People, community, a church home. We were built for community. We were built to be with others. And it all starts with the decision to prioritize time with God. And look, that's what Campus Bread is about. I want to make it easy for you to prioritize time with God and encourage you to look for him in your everyday. I want to motivate you to keep the dust off that Bible and remind you that your college life can only be enhanced when your faith is strong. I also believe that with God, the possibilities and opportunities in life are endless. And with him, we are indeed limitless. Okay. As I've mentioned, I've been around the block a few times. Okay. And I can report that my faith walk in college was completely imperfect. It was often hijacked from every worldly distraction the enemy could throw at me. Yet he still pursued me. He loved me through my mess when I turned my back on him, and he did not give up on me. Why? Because I'm his daughter. I am who he says I am. And who's that? He says I'm chosen. He says I'm called, royal, exquisite, set apart, precious, and beloved. And so are you. What does he say about you? Who does he say you are? How we start our morning and the information we consume daily matters. And inside this podcast, I'll be sharing what I do each day to encounter Jesus so that you can be encouraged to make room for God and keep that conversation flowing. You and I are going to have some real talk through the good, the bad, and the ugly of college life because we know Jesus loves us. He is trustworthy, forgiving, and he is gracious. Okay, I'll be sharing motivational and encouraging episodes each week where we will hit topics that are relevant and relatable to your college experience, whether it's just you and me or inside an intimate guest interview. We will point back to Jesus over and over again. Ultimately, this podcast will provide refreshment and encouragement for your faith walk, and even a new perspective for believers and non believers. You're going to be fed with the good stuff each week because, as I said, what we consume matters. So, if you're eager to discover your place in this new world, but secretly battling against loneliness, anxiety, or fear of failure, this podcast is for you. If you're feeling distant from God, yet self aware enough to take responsibility for your part and not prioritizing time with Him, I've been there. And if you're seeking, thirsty for wisdom outside of the social and cultural pressures to encourage and guide you, you are in the right place. Or if you just want a cheerleader on the sidelines reminding you that this too shall pass, I've got your back. Whether you grew up on church or you're new to setting your Sunday morning alarm, it's time to create a faith of your own. And your campus bred community is here to encourage you and cheer you on. May you see yourself the way the Father sees you, as an exquisite and beloved daughter. Look, I cannot wait to connect with you more inside this podcast as we create a faith movement together on college campuses. I'm going to close us out, pray us out, and then we're going to say goodbye. Until next time, Lord, thank you so much for the beautiful, beautiful woman who's listening to this episode of Campus Bread. I thank you for the movement that we are creating together. And I pray that you will protect us and continue to guide us as we step in faith and as we seek you. Amen. Until next time, beautiful, I'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Campus Bread podcast. I hope it encouraged and motivated you to connect with other women in faith, dust off that Bible of yours, and see yourself as the King sees you, exquisite in His eyes. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow it for more goodness, and don't forget to share with a friend or even on social as we build this community together. I'd love to connect with you and keep you in the know of upcoming episodes, events, and online community hangouts. So just head over to the show notes and click the link to get in touch or DM me on Instagram at Campus Bread. Until next time, keep making room for God throughout your week. And remember, with Him, you are limitless.